In the golden hush of a late afternoon, the sun cast long shadows across a sleek, polished lot. The air was thick with the scent of new leather and engine oil, a symphony of luxury and aspiration. But amidst this shimmering veneer, a silent tragedy unfolded. An old man, shoulders hunched and eyes clouded with worry, stood trembling beside a shiny new car. His face, etched with lines of hardship and humility, flickered with a fleeting hope that was swiftly shattered by the cold glare of condescension. A salesperson's words, sharp and dismissive, cut through the air like a whip, leaving the old man crumpled in shame, his dignity battered beneath the weight of unspoken judgments. This wasn't just a dealership. It was a battleground of pride and pain. And in that moment, the world seemed to pause, an invisible curtain falling between the rich and the poor, between judgment and mercy. The old man's trembling hands clutched at his weathered coat, as if anchoring himself to some fragile thread of dignity that was slipping away. The glossy cars around him gleamed like trophies, yet none could hide the quiet despair etched into his expression. It was a scene that whispered of stories left untold, of struggles hidden beneath the veneer of wealth and status. In the shadows of this moment, unseen yet watching, was a neighbor, someone whose life had often been a blur of success and comfort, untouched by the harsh realities that so many face. Today, that neighbor's gaze lingered on the old man, not with indifference, but with a quiet, aching awareness. It was as if a gentle breeze carried the silent question, what if, in this fleeting instant, kindness could break the chains of humiliation? What if, amid the gleam of luxury, there was room for compassion? As the scene faded into the soft glow of dusk, the old man's figure remained etched in the mind of the observer, a poignant reminder that beneath every surface of wealth lies a shared human vulnerability. And perhaps, just perhaps, that moment of silent suffering was the universe's quiet call for a different kind of wealth, one built on compassion and genuine connection. Because sometimes, the greatest act of kindness isn't a grand gesture or a sweeping change, but a simple, heartfelt gift, the kind that transforms not just a moment, but the entire course of a life. Walter had always been a man of quiet resilience, yet even the strongest carry scars unseen. His existence was woven with threads of loneliness, a life marked by the absence of family, the loss of his wife years ago leaving an indelible void in his heart. Every morning, he awoke to the creak of an old house that echoed with memories of better days, the silence punctuated only by the soft hum of a clock and the distant sounds of a world rushing by outside. His hands, once steady with purpose, now trembled slightly as he prepared his modest breakfast, the weight of years settling into his bones like an unspoken burden. His eyes carried a story of grief, of nights spent staring at the ceiling, haunted by memories of dreams long lost. The ache of rejection lingered in his chest, not from others' words but from the quiet feeling that life had quietly moved on without him. He tried to find purpose in small routines, watering the garden, reading old newspapers, tending to his ailing dog, but each act was tinged with a fragile hope that somehow, he might still belong somewhere. Yet, in the mirror, he only saw a shadow of himself, a man who had once believed in brighter tomorrows but now wondered if those days were forever behind him. There was a heaviness in his chest as he stood outside the dealership that day, watching the gleaming cars with a sense of longing and despair. His dignity had been battered, not just by the cold words of a stranger, but by the relentless erosion of hope that life's hardships had carved into his spirit. The humiliation burned deep, a reminder that even in a world of wealth and privilege, vulnerability was universal. His shoulders sagged under the weight of years of silent suffering, and for a moment, he wondered if anyone truly saw him, not as a customer or an obstacle, but as a human being, fragile and deserving of kindness. In that quiet, vulnerable space, Walter's heart ached, not for material things, but for connection, for recognition of his worth beyond the scars of time and loss. He was no hero in his own eyes, only a man weathered by the storms of life, clinging to the hope that someday, someone might see through his worn facade and recognize the quiet strength that still flickered within. As he turned to leave, the world seemed to hold its breath, and a gentle breeze seemed to whisper of possibilities, of moments when compassion could bloom in the most unexpected places. Walter's story was not one of grand triumph, but of simple humanity, a reminder that beneath the surface of loneliness and pain, there is always a flicker of hope waiting to be kindled. And perhaps, in that fragile space, a new chapter could begin, one written not with words, but with acts of genuine kindness that whisper softly to the soul, "You are seen, you are valued, and you are not alone." On that quiet street, just as the sun dipped below the horizon, a man named Daniel was passing by, his footsteps slow and unhurried. He was the kind of person who often moved through life unnoticed, his face lined with the small imperfections of daily struggles, his eyes carrying a tired but gentle expression. Daniel wasn't a hero or a savior. He was simply a man trying to get through his own days with as much honesty as he could muster. His life was a series of small, imperfect moments, paying bills, fixing a leaky faucet, comforting his struggling daughter when the world felt too heavy. He wasn't flawless. He sometimes snapped at his coworkers, his patience frayed by the weight of his own worries. But he was kind, quietly so, and in ways that often went unnoticed. That evening, as Daniel wandered past the dealership, he noticed the old man standing near the lot, shoulders hunched, eyes distant. He saw the defeated posture, the way the man's gaze lingered on the cars as if longing for something just out of reach. Daniel paused, uncertain if he should intervene or simply walk on. The man seemed so small against the rows of gleaming vehicles, almost invisible in the vastness of wealth surrounding him. Without a word, Daniel slowed his pace, hesitating just long enough to catch the faint tremor in the old man's hands. As he passed, he offered a soft, unassuming nod, an acknowledgement of shared humanity. No grand gesture, no words of comfort, just a simple gesture that conveyed, "I see you." The old man looked up briefly, eyes clouded with fatigue and unspoken stories. For a moment, their gazes met, and Daniel saw a flicker of something, perhaps recognition, or maybe a silent plea for kindness. Then, Daniel continued his walk, leaving a small space for that fragile connection to linger. Later that evening, Daniel sat on his porch, staring at the darkening sky. His mind kept drifting back to the old man. He knew he had no magic words or solutions, but a quiet sense grew within him that sometimes, the smallest acts could carry the greatest weight. Perhaps it was enough to simply notice someone's pain, to acknowledge their presence, to leave behind a whisper of compassion in an otherwise indifferent world. Daniel's imperfections weren't erased by that moment, nor did he believe himself to be a hero. But he understood that kindness doesn't require grand gestures. Sometimes, it's just a gentle presence, a subtle act, a quiet acknowledgement of shared vulnerability. And as the stars began to twinkle, he wondered if, in some small way, that moment might have planted a seed, one that could someday bloom into something more meaningful. In the quiet stillness of the night, the world felt a little softer, a little more human. Because sometimes, the most profound change starts not with sweeping acts or heroic deeds, but with a simple, honest gesture, an unspoken acknowledgement that we all carry our own burdens, and perhaps, just perhaps, we're not meant to face them alone. In the days that followed, the world around him seemed to hum with quiet possibility. Daniel didn't rush to change everything overnight. Instead, he began with small, gentle acts, like the soft tap of a neighbor reaching across invisible fences to offer a hand. One morning, he noticed the old man sitting on a battered bench outside his modest home, staring at the sky with a distant look. Without a word, Daniel approached with a steaming cup of coffee, holding it out like an unspoken peace offering. The old man looked up, surprise flickering in his eyes, then softened as he accepted the warmth. Their fingers brushed briefly as he handed over the cup, an unremarkable gesture, yet it carried the weight of unspoken understanding. Later, Daniel found himself walking past the old man's humble house, noticing the battered roof that seemed to sag under years of neglect. He remembered the look of longing in the man's eyes at the dealership, the way his shoulders had drooped under the weight of humiliation. It was a small thing, but he took out his phone, searching for a local handyman, and arranged for someone to come by and do repairs. When the work was finished, Daniel simply knocked on the door to see the old man's face light up, gratitude shimmering through the weariness. No words of thanks were necessary. The act was enough to bridge a gap of loneliness. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows over the quiet street, Daniel saw the old man struggling to carry a bag of groceries. Without hesitation, he stepped forward, offering to help. The man hesitated for a moment, eyes clouded with pride, but then handed over the bag with a gentle nod. As they walked together, the old man spoke softly of his late wife, of the days when life was simpler, and of dreams long deferred. Daniel listened patiently, not rushing to fill the silence but simply being present. In those moments, the old man's guarded veneer softened, revealing a fragile vulnerability that Daniel recognized, an echo of his own unspoken fears. In another instance, a sudden rainstorm caught the old man unprepared. Daniel, noticing him under a tiny, tattered umbrella, quickly handed over his own, shielding him from the downpour. They hurried to shelter beneath the awning of a nearby shop, sharing a quiet space as the rain drummed around them. For a moment, there was only the sound of rain and the unspoken bond of two lives intersecting in a shared vulnerability, a reminder that kindness need not be loud or dramatic, it simply had to be present. Over time, these small gestures began to weave a fragile tapestry of connection. Daniel started leaving small packages of food on the old man's porch, fresh bread, fruit, little things that spoke of care without expectation. The old man, in turn, began to open up more, sharing stories of his youth, of a life filled with love and loss, of dreams that still flickered faintly in his eyes. Their friendship grew quietly, rooted in these simple acts of kindness, moments that chipped away at the isolation that had defined the old man's life for so long. Yet, as the external world spun on, a different storm was gathering, one that threatened to undo these fragile bonds, testing whether small acts of kindness could withstand the rising tides of hardship and misunderstanding. The quiet strength of these gestures, however, was what kept hope alive, reminding both that even amid chaos, a simple act of compassion could be a lighthouse guiding us through the darkest nights. Because, in the end, it's these small, unnoticed acts that quietly whisper to the soul, "You are seen, you are cared for, and you are never truly alone." The quiet street that once seemed so peaceful now buzzed with whispers and sideways glances. It started subtle, an overheard conversation, a lingering stare from neighbors who had watched the old man's humble world slowly shift. Rumors spread like wildfire, fueled by envy and misunderstanding, and soon, the small act of kindness that Daniel had extended was being distorted into something much darker. The community's silent judgment grew louder with each passing day, like a storm gathering on the horizon. One afternoon, as Daniel was tending to his garden, he noticed a figure approaching, Mrs. Carter, the town's unofficial gatekeeper of reputation, her face tight with concern and something darker lurking behind her eyes. She whispered hurriedly, her voice trembling with a mixture of worry and reproach, that the old man's story had taken a turn. That the dealership incident had somehow become a scandal, twisted into a tale of charity gone wrong. Rumors painted Daniel as some kind of meddler, a disruptor of social order, and the old man as a symbol of unwanted change. The news spread like wildfire. Gossip traveled from porch to porch, from cafes to church gatherings. Whispers turned to accusations. Some neighbors questioned whether Daniel's kindness was genuine or some kind of social experiment. Others speculated about the old man's background, doubting his story, questioning his motives. The community's once warm acceptance had turned cold and suspicious. The fragile bond that had begun to blossom between Daniel and the old man now faced a brutal storm of judgment. One day, a local journalist who had caught wind of the story arrived unannounced at Daniel's doorstep, camera in hand, eager to capture what they called the latest town controversy. Daniel watched in stunned silence as the reporter knocked, then pushed past, demanding interviews and footage. The old man, now caught in the crossfire, appeared visibly distressed, retreating into himself as strangers encroached on his space. The simple act of kindness was being turned into a spectacle, a problem for the town rather than a testament to humanity. Daniel felt the walls closing in. His stomach clenched with fear that all they had built, all the gentle moments of trust, would be wrecked by gossip and media exposure. The community's judgment was like a flood threatening to drown their fragile connection, and he wondered if their bond could withstand such external pressure. Was it enough to face the gossip, the sneers, the accusatory whispers? Could something so pure survive in a world that often preferred superficial appearances over genuine acts? The old man's eyes, once filled with gratitude, now flickered with uncertainty. He looked to Daniel with a mixture of hope and doubt, as if questioning whether their quiet acts of kindness could truly withstand the storm of external hostility. Daniel's heart ached. His own fears gnawed at him, whispering that perhaps he had stepped into something far bigger than he could handle. That the kindness he wanted to nurture might be ripped apart by the harsh realities of a judgmental community. That night, as Daniel sat alone on his porch, the distant glow of the streetlights flickered like fragile hope amid the shadows. The external obstacle loomed large, an insurmountable barrier threatening to fracture everything they'd begun. Yet, deep within, a flicker of resolve remained. He knew that true loyalty wasn't built in easy moments but tested in adversity. If their bond was to survive, it would need to be stronger than gossip, more resilient than false rumors. As he looked up at the star-studded sky, Daniel whispered softly to himself, a silent vow that kindness, no matter how small, had the power to weather storms. That even in the face of external adversity, love and loyalty could carve out a space of hope. Because sometimes, it's not the external obstacles that define us, but how we choose to stand against them. And in that choice, there lies the true strength of human connection, an unbreakable thread woven through the chaos, whispering, "Stay true, hold on, and never let the darkness drown the light." The days that followed were heavy with unspoken tension. Walter, the old man, seemed to carry an invisible weight, his shoulders slightly hunched, eyes downcast as he navigated the whispers and sideways glances that had become part of his daily routine. Yet, amidst the chaos, Daniel refused to turn away. Every morning, he would find Walter sitting quietly on a battered bench in the park, a faint smile lingering on his face as if trying to hold on to some core of hope. Daniel would simply sit beside him, not pressing for words, just sharing the silence that often speaks louder than conversation. Sometimes he'd bring a cup of coffee or a small loaf of bread, placing it gently in Walter's hands, a quiet gesture of support that needed no explanation. Walter's fragile stance remained steady, not because he believed the storm would pass quickly, but because he knew he was not alone. His presence was a quiet anchor for Daniel, a reminder of the importance of steadfast loyalty amid external chaos. Walter's eyes sometimes flickered with gratitude when Daniel sat by his side, a fleeting moment of connection that seemed to say, "I am here, and I will stay." It was a simple, human support, nothing heroic or miraculous, just a steady presence that refused to waver, even as the world around them threatened to crumble. Sometimes Daniel would walk with Walter through the neighborhood, their steps slow and unhurried. As they moved, Walter shared snippets of his past, stories of days when he worked tirelessly, of small joys he still clung to, and of the dreams that hadn't faded completely. Daniel listened, not trying to fix or change anything, but offering his presence as a steadying force. Walter's words were sparse, but each one carried weight, proof that even in silence, loyalty could be expressed through unwavering companionship. Their walks weren't about fixing the external storm but about affirming the quiet strength that exists in simply being there. On particularly difficult days, when the gossip and media coverage seemed relentless, Daniel found Walter sitting on the porch of his modest home, staring at the horizon as if seeking some distant hope. Daniel would sit beside him, their shoulders almost touching, sharing the kind of silence that speaks of resilience. Walter's gaze remained fixed, not with defeat, but with a quiet determination rooted in the knowledge that someone was standing firm beside him. In those moments, Daniel felt a subtle shift within himself, an awakening to the power of loyalty that doesn't need grand gestures but manifests in consistent, human presence. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long, amber shadows across the landscape, Walter looked at Daniel with a faint, appreciative smile. There was no need for words. Their bond had quietly deepened through those small acts of steadfastness, standing firm despite the external obstacles, refusing to let the storm erode their connection. Walter's eyes shone with a renewed sense of dignity, a silent acknowledgement that even in the face of adversity, loyalty and presence could be the most profound acts of kindness. Standing there, under the vast, fading light, Daniel felt a gentle surge of hope. He realized that loyalty isn't about dramatic battles or miraculous rescues. It's about showing up day after day, quietly holding space for someone's pain, and offering your presence as a testament that they are not alone. The stars slowly appeared, twinkling softly above, silent witnesses to the quiet strength of human connection. And as Daniel looked into Walter's steady gaze, he understood that true support is rooted not in grand gestures but in the simple, unwavering act of staying. In those quiet moments, amid the fading light and whispering wind, the message was clear. Sometimes, the greatest strength lies in simply being there, standing firm and unshaken, ready to face whatever storms may come. Because in loyalty, in presence, and in steadfastness, we find the truest form of hope, and the quiet promise that no matter how dark the night, dawn will come. In the quiet hours after the storm of judgment and gossip had settled, Daniel found himself sitting alone in his study, gazing out the window at the fading light of the evening. The world outside still buzzed with rumors and whispers, but inside, something was shifting within him. The weight of guilt and helplessness that had pressed down for days began to loosen, replaced by a gentle sense of clarity. He realized that his act of kindness, though well-intentioned, had only been the beginning, a small spark in a much larger journey of understanding his own worth and purpose. For so long, Daniel had defined himself by success, by possessions, by appearances. But now, he saw that true worth was rooted in connection, in the quiet acts of compassion that ripple outward and touch lives in ways he never fully appreciated before. Slowly, he began to rediscover his own passions, not in the pursuit of material wealth, but in creation, in giving back in a way that felt authentic. He took up painting again, not for show or validation, but to express the colors swirling within his soul. His brushstrokes became a testament to his internal awakening, blues of calm, golds of hope, and streaks of shadow that reflected his past doubts. As he moved his hand across the canvas, he felt a weight lifting, as if each stroke was a step toward healing. His smile returned gradually, not the superficial smile of success, but a genuine glow rooted in newfound purpose. He began to dream again, not of status or riches, but of ways he could serve others, teach, and inspire. Daniel started hosting small workshops in his garage, sharing his skills and encouraging young people in the community to pursue their passions. He listened more intently, not just to their words but to their hopes and fears, realizing that every person carried invisible struggles, much like Walter once had. Slowly, he understood that his worth was not measured by what he owned or how others perceived him, but by the impact he could have on lives around him. Those moments of giving, of simply being present, had planted seeds of purpose deep within him. His heart opened in ways he never allowed before, and with each act of kindness and every story shared, he felt a gentle awakening, a rebirth of his own humanity. One evening, sitting on his porch with a cup of tea, Daniel watched the stars emerge, shimmering softly against the night sky. He thought about Walter, about the community, about the power of quiet loyalty and unseen strength. And in that stillness, a profound realization settled over him, that life's true treasures aren't in possessions or accolades but in the ways we lift others up, in the small moments that ripple outward to create lasting change. His internal transformation was slow but sure, like the dawn creeping over the horizon, gentle yet unstoppable. He understood that the journey of healing begins within, and that the genuine worth of a person is measured not by external validation but by the love, hope, and inspiration they carry and share. As he looked at the starlit sky, Daniel felt a renewed sense of purpose, a quiet promise to himself that he would continue to nurture this inner light, to create, to teach, to give back in ways that truly mattered. Because in the end, life's most beautiful moments are those when we realize that we are most valuable not for what we have, but for who we are, and for the hope we ignite in others. And so, with a gentle breath, he stepped forward into this new chapter, carrying the truth that within each of us lies the power to heal, to inspire, and to transform the world, one quiet act at a time. The town gathered in the town square as evening settled, casting a golden glow over the gathering. Today was not just any day, it was a day of reckoning, of acceptance, of transformation. Daniel stood on the makeshift stage, his heart pounding in his chest, cheeks flushed with the weight of all he had carried, the doubts, the fears, the shame. For weeks, he had watched the community's whispers grow louder, their judgments sharper. But today, he was here to face them, to show that change was real, and that courage could rise from the ashes of past mistakes. His hands trembled slightly as he looked out at the faces, some familiar, some strangers, all bearing witness to what might be the turning point of his life. The town's mayor stepped forward, nodding gently, giving Daniel a moment of quiet permission. He took a deep breath and stepped into the center of the stage, the microphone trembling in his grip. With a voice that grew steadier by the second, he began to speak, not just to the crowd but to himself, to the universe, to the silent depths of his own soul. I used to believe that my worth was measured by what I owned, by how others saw me, he said softly, eyes sweeping over the crowd. But I've come to understand that true strength lies in vulnerability, in admitting when we're wrong, and in opening our hearts, not just to those we love but to everyone around us. He paused, feeling the weight of those words settle over the gathering. I saw a man humiliated, and I thought I could fix that with a gift. But I realize now that the real gift was the courage to admit my flaws and to stand here today, in front of you all, embracing humility and change. His voice grew stronger. I want to thank Walter, not just for showing me what kindness really means but for reminding me that our worth isn't in possessions or appearances but in the quiet strength of character. And I want to ask for your forgiveness, not just for the mistakes I've made but for the times I've overlooked the true value of human connection. The crowd was silent, listening intently. Daniel took a step forward, voice trembling with emotion. I stand here today, not to seek applause, but to show that we can all grow, that we can all change. That, despite our fears and imperfections, there is hope. That hope begins with acceptance, with showing up for each other, even when it's hard. As he finished, he looked toward Walter, who had been quietly watching from the crowd, tears glistening in his eyes. Daniel's voice cracked slightly as he called out, Walter, would you come up here? When Walter hesitated, unsure, Daniel gently extended his hand. The old man stepped forward, slowly, with dignity, and joined him on stage. The community erupted into applause, not just for Walter but for the courage of both men, to heal, to forgive, to stand together in vulnerability. Walter looked at Daniel with a shy smile, then nodded, as if to say, Yes, this is right. In that moment, the square seemed to hold its breath, the past, the present, and the future converging into something profound. Daniel reached out, taking Walter's hand, and in doing so, he felt the weight of his fears lift. The community's acceptance was more than a public acknowledgement. It was a declaration that love, humility, and genuine human connection could triumph over prejudice and pride. The sky above shimmered with the last light of day, stars beginning to twinkle as if to honor this quiet revolution. The moment was poetic in its simplicity, a testament that true change begins when we are brave enough to stand in front of others and show our authentic selves. As the crowd dispersed, Daniel looked around, feeling the warmth of acceptance bloom within him. This was more than a speech, it was a promise that he would continue to walk the path of humility and kindness, inspiring others to do the same. Because the greatest stage is not just in front of an audience, but within our hearts, where real change begins. And as he took a deep breath, he knew that tonight the stars weren't just shining, they were witnessing the birth of a new chapter, one rooted in courage, forgiveness, and hope. The small, humble kitchen was filled with a quiet tension that had lingered for years. Emma, Daniel's sister, stood by the window, her hands trembling slightly as she watched her brother across the yard, helping Walter into his new car. The sunlight caught her eyes, making the tears well up unbidden. She had watched everything unfold from afar, her heart heavy with regret and long-held guilt. For so long, she had believed that Daniel's kindness was naive, that his compassion would only bring trouble or embarrassment. She had dismissed his actions, dismissed him, and silently judged him for what she saw as foolishness. But now, seeing the genuine warmth in her brother's face, seeing Walter's shy smile as he sat behind the wheel, she knew she had been wrong all along. Emma took a deep breath, steadied herself, and stepped outside, her steps hesitant yet resolute. She approached Daniel slowly, not wanting to interrupt, but feeling the weight of her need for forgiveness. Her voice was soft, almost trembling. "Daniel," she began, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "I was wrong. I didn't see what you saw. I didn't understand that kindness isn't weakness. It's strength. And I see it now, in the way you've helped Walter, in the way you've made this community better." Her voice cracked as she continued. "I've spent so long judging you for trying to do what's right, for caring too much. But I realize now that I was the one who was blind. I see the truth in your actions, and I'm sorry I didn't support us, sooner." Daniel looked at her, surprise flickering across his face, then softened into a gentle smile. "Emma, I never wanted to hurt you," he said quietly. "I just wanted to do what I thought was right. And I'm glad you're here now. It means everything to me to have you understand." She stepped closer, her eyes shimmering with tears, and reached out to clasp his hands. "I forgive you, Daniel. I forgive myself for not seeing sooner. For not understanding that love and compassion are what truly matter. I've wasted so much time holding on to pride, but I want to move forward, together. My brother, my family." Her voice was thick with emotion, but her smile was genuine, full of hope. "From now on, I promise to stand with you, to learn from you, and to support you in every way I can." Daniel pulled her into a tight embrace, feeling the warmth of her forgiveness settle deep into his soul. They held each other for a long moment, the past dissolving like mist in the morning sun. Around them, the world seemed to pause, a silent witness to the quiet miracle of reconciliation. The broken pieces of their relationship, once jagged and painful, now began to fit together softly, like a puzzle finally coming into focus. In that embrace, they both understood, redemption isn't about grand gestures or quick apologies. It's about patience, humility, and the unwavering willingness to see the truth in each other's hearts. It is about recognizing that everyone makes mistakes, but love and forgiveness can heal even the deepest wounds. The clouds above parted slightly, letting the golden light spill over the yard, illuminating their renewed bond. As Emma stepped back, she looked into her brother's eyes, and he saw in her the dawn of a new beginning, a chapter where understanding replaced judgment, where humility paved the way for love. Tears still shimmered in her eyes, but now they sparkled with hope rather than regret. "Let's walk this path together," she whispered. "No more hiding, no more regrets. Just us, moving forward, stronger than ever." And so, in the gentle quiet of that moment, the family found its way back to each other, not because they had all the answers, but because they dared to admit they were wrong and chose forgiveness instead. It was a slow, sacred process, built on honesty and patience, like the slow unfolding of a sunrise, each moment leading to light, each tear watering the seeds of true reconciliation. The sky above shimmered in the soft glow of dusk, whispering promises of hope, of love renewed, and of a future built on the forgiving power of the heart. And in that quiet, poetic ending, they all knew that true redemption begins when we open ourselves to understanding, and when love, like the dawn, rises anew. As the night descended softly over the quiet town, a gentle silence settled, wrapping everything in a quiet embrace. The stars began to emerge, tiny pinpricks of light flickering against the vast canvas of the sky, each one a silent witness to the stories of kindness, humility, and reconciliation that had unfolded. It was as if the universe itself was whispering that even in the smallest acts, those born from genuine love and understanding, there lies a quiet, unstoppable power. The night air carried a faint melody, perhaps the distant murmur of crickets, or the gentle rustling of leaves, reminding us that life's most profound moments are often marked by stillness and serenity. In that tranquil darkness, the story of Walter, Daniel, and their families found its poetic conclusion, not in grand gestures or miraculous revelations, but in the simple, enduring truth that no one is truly alone when love is shared. It's in the quiet moments of acceptance, the gentle gestures of forgiveness, and the steady heartbeat of compassion that we find the greatest magic of all. Love, after all, isn't some distant, fleeting miracle. It's the steady light that guides us through our darkest hours and the gentle dawn that awakens us to new beginnings. It's the unspoken promise that, no matter how lonely or broken we feel, someone, somewhere, is holding a piece of our pain, ready to share in our healing. Love is proof that, even amid the chaos and doubt, we are never truly isolated. We are woven into a vast, intricate tapestry of human connection, each thread strengthened by acts of kindness and understanding. In the quiet glow of the stars, we realize that these moments, these small but meaningful acts, are what truly shape us, what make us human. And as the first light of dawn begins to paint the horizon in soft hues of pink and gold, it reminds us that every ending is also a new beginning. Just as the night yields to morning, the darkness of misunderstanding can give way to the light of compassion. Every act of love, no matter how modest, plants a seed in the fertile soil of the heart, seed that can blossom into something beautiful, something eternal. It's a gentle reminder that we each hold the power to change lives, not through grandiose gestures, but through simple acts of kindness, like a shared smile, a listening ear, or a quiet gesture of forgiveness. So, as you gaze up at those shimmering stars and listen to the symphony of nature's quiet song, remember, love is always present, always accessible, waiting patiently in the wings of our everyday lives. It's in the moments we choose to see each other, not as strangers or outsiders, but as fellow travelers on a shared journey. It's in the courage to forgive, to admit mistakes, and to embrace vulnerability. Love is the silent music that plays softly within us all, reminding us that no one is truly alone when kindness is shared and hearts are opened. Let this story be a gentle prompt, a call to action, to carry love into your own life. Like, subscribe, and share this message with those who need to hear it, because every act of kindness, no matter how small, has the power to light up the world, one star at a time. In the end, we are all part of something vast and beautiful, woven together in the silent symphony of love, hope, and human connection. And in that shared melody, we find our place, our purpose, and the everlasting truth, that love, in all its quiet strength, can heal even the deepest wounds and remind us that, together, we are never truly alone.